So we will go to discussion item number 16, discussion of the formation of a board audit committee and the selection process for internal auditor, Exhibit I. Dr. Ross, you want to take that?
I'm going to ask Ms. Paul to come forward and lead us through this discussion. This is in an effort to build some internal controls within our system. Ms. Paul?
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Ross. I'm here tonight just to spur some discussion about the formation of an audit committee. So as y'all will recall from our external auditor, JAG, and her report at our September 19th meeting, one of the key recommendations from this accounting firm was to establish an audit committee, and then that audit committee would then approve an internal auditor that would report directly to them. So the reason for this is to have an independent checks and balance on the district. We would not want an internal auditor to report to the finance department or to Dr. Ross as superintendent. We would want them to report to the audit committee so that they could, if there were ever any issues within finance or within administration, that they can report directly to a board committee. So I just wanted to spur this conversation with y'all, talk about a little bit about what an internal auditor does. They would be responsible for testing internal controls, identifying risk, and making recommendations to the audit committee. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to y'all for your discussion.
Ms. Huddle.
Yeah, not so much a question as just maybe share with the other board, because I actually am the chair of the audit committee. I'm on the board of directors of a life insurance company. I'm the chair of the audit committee. And while the internal audit department does report to the audit committee, everything goes to the full board for a vote. So we could structure it the same way. So the audit committee makes recommendations to the board on things like, you know, the approval of the internal audits that have been done, any issues that come up with the internal audits. And the reason that they do that is the internal auditor, sometimes things that they're looking at are in the finance department. So it's kind of like the chicken watching the, you know, the hen watching, or the fox watching the hen house. So that's why usually they're structured that way, is just to protect the internal finance department from feeling like they're in control, or, you know, for example, our CFO was in, could shoot down what an internal auditor wanted to do. So that's why it's really best practices to do it, just like you've presented here. So just wanted to share that, and then also share that I think a lot of times people are confused about audits. The regular audit that we get, the financial audit, they don't look at these kind of things. So we're a $200 million organization. And your external auditors, you know, primarily looking at, you know, is it really an asset? Is it really a liability? They're looking at, did everything go in the right place? They're not going to go look to see if a process was really being followed to a T. They're going to do some sampling, but not to the level that an internal audit would be. And I would also just like to throw out, I would recommend that while it's structured this way, that there would be a dotted line to the CFO, because clearly the audit committee's not going to approve time off or things like that. So just throw that out there.
Thank you, Ms. Huddle. That's good information. Ms. Blackburn-Hines?
I have just a couple of questions, because I'm not really sure where the thought of this is going. Is the audit committee going to be comprised of just board members or community members and board members? And also, is it an external auditor? It's not an internal auditor. Okay. So is it going to be a district employee, or so if it's a district employee and it reports directly to the board and not to the superintendent, don't we have to change the policy of, is this like a policy committee conversation as well before tonight, where before anything gets done, the policy committee has to grant the authority or not grant the authority, because it doesn't do that, but have like those conversations about whether or not the board can have another direct reportee, because right now the only person in direct line for us is the superintendent. So there seems to be like there's a few like loose ends here before we could even appoint an audit committee, because we don't even know who would actually be on the audit committee.
Right. It is my recommendation, we assign this to a policy committee to look at those things.
Okay.
It's our hope that you would not have supervisory role over this person, because legally, you're right, your executive power is to the superintendent. This control is to ensure that if, for instance, the superintendent and the CFO were involved in illegal activity with the public's funds, that there is a protection for the whistleblower, the internal auditor, that person would be able to come directly to the board without going through the superintendent or the CFO. The day-to-day of that person would be handled, as you said, through us, but we would recommend that this go to a policy committee.
Before anything
Because
happens.
I think there are a few things in terms of standing committees that we have to address, as
Right.
well as that structure. It is our goal, as we've had some audits come up, that we wanted to go ahead and press this to the full board, because we believe that we'll need this in the near future.
It is important. Yes. Did you have something?
Just going to say that the policy committee does have to look at that, I believe, because right now we have, our committees are not standing committees, and they're committees of the whole, whereas this committee would have to be a standing committee. Whether or not all board members would be on the committee, I don't know, but that would be discussed. But this would be a standing committee that goes on, its duties are described, and I think we'd have to do that very carefully in policy.
You're right.
So, yeah, it would have to go to, to really be considered as to who sits on it, as you said, and what the ramifications are.
So, yes, Ms. Huddle.
Just to point out too, I think this would be less expensive in the long run because, for example, we just, approved the up to $5,000 and we talked about how it could be up to $10,000 for an external auditor who charges an average of $250 an hour to look at one specific thing. So, and this would be proactive too. So you could have an auditor that is looking at places like that in our processes. And if Dr. Ross saw something that needed to be looked at, you tag them and they go look at it, and that's going to be a lot less expensive than an external person.
Well, this is discussion tonight, and so we will let the policy committee take this up and bring it back to the full board. Is that good? Okay. 17, discussion of June 30th, 2022 fund balance analysis with assignment recommendations, Exhibit J.
I'll turn it back over to our CFO, Madison Paul.
Great, thank you again. So I did want to, before we get into the FY22 fund balance, I wanted to do a slight recap of what y'all have seen before. So as of June 27, 2022, when y'all voted to approve the FY23 budget, y'all also talked about the fund balance for FY22. So if y'all will recall here, we had a projected fund balance, as of June 30, 2021, our fund balance was roughly $51 million. Of that $51 million, roughly $5 million was non-spendable, which usually ends up being inventory and prepaid, so non-cash items. Y'all made an assignment of $10.8 million, and I'll go into the details on the next slide of what that was, leaving an unassigned fund balance of roughly $35.5 million, which was within the policy of 15 to 18%. Again, as of June 27th, the expectation was that we would add an additional $1.25 million from the general fund to fund balance. We still feel good about that estimate at this time. We do not have our audited financials back yet, but we still feel good and comfortable with that number, so we left it here. So projected fund balance as of June 30, 2022 is roughly $52.5 million. So I wanted to dig into what that assignment was. I know we've talked a little bit about this already, but for the FY22 fiscal year, y'all approved assignment of $10.8 million roughly a year ago. 1.3 of that was for startup costs at Piney Woods. $3 million was for an employee appreciation gift. $50 Fridays for perfect attendance was also another $3 million. And then a $3.5 million for future capital needs. So that made up that 10.8 as of this time last year. Looking at what was actually spent, so you can see here, Pineywood startup costs, we spent almost the total amount of what was allocated. The employee appreciation gift was paid out on November 19th, 2021, at roughly $2.8 million, and then $50 Fridays for perfect attendance was also paid out at roughly 2.4. So those three items add up to roughly 6.5 million, leaving a remaining 4.3 of the assignment that was not used. So as we talked about earlier, 3.5 million of that was for future capital needs that we had not, as of this moment last year, assigned, to a specific project. Y'all talked about a little bit earlier that y'all wanted to assign 3.5 million to Irmo High School, so that has been approved. So I apologize, looks a little bit off from the original packet, but so looking at what our requests are as of this meeting. So again, at June 27th, the expectation was 52.5 million in projected fund balance. We used 6.5 million last year. So our new projected fund balance as of June 30 is roughly 46 million. Of that 46, non-spendable is 4.3. Again, that's inventory and prepaids. Y'all also approved a few assignments at June 27th. One was for the D5 snack program, that was 1.3 million, and then the NEST FTEs were 1.5 million. What y'all recommended tonight was to assign 3.5 million. Again, this was a carryover from FY21, but just earmarking it specifically for Irmo High School. So the request tonight is up for discussion is for another employee appreciation gift to be paid out November 18th, 2022 for American Education Week at $3 million. So this would match the amount that was paid out last year of $1,000 per permanent employee. And this leaves us with a unassigned fund balance of 32.3 million, which is 15.8% of our budgeted expenditures for FY22, which falls within board policy DFAB, that our reserve funds would stay between 15 and 18%.
That's great. Questions? Ms. Moore?
It's not really a question, more of a statement. As I told Dr. Ross, I was very happy to see the American Education Week payment going out again to teachers. The last couple of football games I have attended, I have been asked by many if they could be expecting that for Black Friday, to which I was like, oh, I don't know. But so I think that's awesome that we have the abilities to thank them again this year. So kudos for managing a budget.
Thank you.
I ditto that. That is so appreciated by teachers. You're right. Let's see. Either Blackburn Hines, and then we'll get Ms.
I
Gardner.
was just going to ask, has $50 Fridays stopped? It has stopped. Okay, I was just making sure.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Gardner.
I just wanted to say, too, that I'm very excited about this. If anybody could stay this long to the end of the meeting, this is where it gets good, in my opinion. And I know, Chairman Hammond, you probably wanted this meeting to last forever, but it's not going to. But I do have a motion.
No, I haven't done that.
I know, I'm teasing, but I'm very excited about this, and I'm grateful to Ms. Paula and to Dr. Ross for making this happen again, because I've been getting the same question, are we gonna get this year? And I didn't know until we got our board packet. So I make the motion that we approve the administration's recommendation for the assignment of the employee appreciation gift in the amount of $3 million, as shown in Exhibit J for permanent employees in a permanent position as of November 1st, 2022, to receive a one-time gift of $1,000 during American Education Week.
Is there a second? Ms. Moore seconds. And I think we've discussed it, haven't we? So we shall vote. All those in favor? And that is 7-0 opposed, and that motion passes.
Thank you so much.
Great job. Thank you so much. Well, they think I'm not going to look down at Matt. That's what they think. But, Mr. Hogan, I know what I can count on you for.
Actually, Chairwoman Hammond, do I have the ability to pass this privilege to you to adjourn this meeting?
Oh, that kind of makes me cry, but I can't. Y'all have to, I got to get a picture of all of y'all. No, I want you to do it.
All right, let's go. I'd like to make the motion that we adjourn the meeting.
And there's a second by Ms. Moore. Are all those in favor? And that is 7-0 opposed. Meeting adjourned.